when you're scared, you can do one of two things. You can hide, or you can do something that's scary to you to fight back.
I mean, I firmly believe that part of the plan is to keep us at an 11 so that we cannot function, we cannot organize, we cannot create change.
What do we have within us that's going to keep us and hold us in a steady place enough to be able to respond to these moments?
You can be the most passionate person in the world, but if the decision maker isn't listening, then we got to replace the decision maker.
26 feels like the ripest moment that we've had in quite some time to really say enough is enough, and we're going to turn the tide in South Carolina.
Breaking the supermajority is critical so that we can at least get back to, it's not even a level playing field, but just being on the field. We need more people to run for office. You, the listener, should run for office.
We spend so much of our time and energy focused on trying to get people to just believe enough that their dollars and their energy and time are worth staying here. Like, keep your dollars here, right? Yep. Invest at home.
Direct voter contact matters. Direct mail is important. Knocking on doors is important. Those are critical things. And if we pretend like they're not, we're going to lose.
I think sometimes as Democrats, we say the state party should do this. They should do everything. Why aren't they doing A, B, C, D, E, F, and G? And it's like, I don't know. I think if the state party's doing A, B, and C, they're doing pretty damn well. D, E, and F might be on you.
What is the vision for what this state could be? What would that look like? Like, could we just take a second and actually put forth an alternative vision for what we believe is possible?
I've seen good policy change lives. I've seen very specific policy take people from a life of depression and destitution to success and fulfillment. And I don't see why we can't have that for every person in South Carolina. And to me, I'm just going to keep pushing until we get closer and closer to that.
Welcome back to Great Ships, everybody. In our last episode, we spent time unpacking the legislative realities of South Carolina, how legislation moves, where legislation has gotten stuck in the past year or two, and what legislation actually has the power to do as it delivers for people's lives across the state. One of the things that came up in that conversation with Phil that we had on our last episode was the need to win seats. Democrats have to win seats if we're ever going to shift the lay of the land in the state and make life better for people. So on this episode, we're shifting gears a bit and we're talking about what it takes to win. This episode is about elections. It's about strategy. It's about Democratic stagnation across the state and how we got here in South Carolina. And more importantly, how we get out of this place and become a more competitive party, both locally and across the state. My honored guest today is Brady Quirk-Garvan. He is a Democratic strategist, an organizer, and someone who's been in the trenches of South Carolina politics for a very long time. Brady previously served as chair of the Charleston County Democratic Party, where under his leadership, the county flipped 6 seats from Republican to Democrat and raised record-breaking resources for voter contact and party infrastructure. He has also worked on major national campaigns, including Obama's in 2008 and Biden's in 2020, right here in South Carolina. I met Brady probably a few months ago personally, and can say I think he's probably one of the most informed and smartest strategically about where we are right now in terms of our democratic politics in South Carolina. And I'm really energized for this conversation. I will say Brady and I are also part of a team behind The Comeback. If any of you have seen any of our content and know about those efforts, The Comeback is an effort focused on reckoning honestly with how Democrats lost ground in the state and what it's going to take to rebuild real durable power so that we can start creating legislation and pass laws that make a difference. And so, again, today, this is about winning. It's about power. It's about electoral struggle and electoral success. And I'm really excited, Brady, to welcome you to the podcast. I'm Taylor Culliver, and this is Great Ships. Let's get into it.
Thanks so much.
So, Brady.
Yes, thanks for Taylor. I'm excited and honored to be on the show today.
Absolutely. I'm super pumped for this because I feel like, again, since I've met you, you're the one voice. So I'm just like, he's got the little nugget. He says the little nugget that opens up conversation and curiosities, at least for me. And so I hold you in high regard. And The first question I always like to start with is just what got you into politics? Why does this matter to you? And what keeps you kind of energized about it?
Yeah, I have not told this story in a long time, but I think it's very important for this moment because I think there's probably a lot of people that are on a similar path to how I got into politics. Growing up, my parents, I mean, they always voted and they took me and read the newspaper, but that was sort of it. They were not political people. They were not party people. I don't think they would have known what a Democratic Party meeting was, but they always instilled in us a sense that like being involved in your community was important. And so for me, I got involved in politics very simply because when I was in high school, it was the lead up to the war in Iraq. And I organized a walkout at my high school. I traveled to DC and to New York City to engage in these mass mobilizations with hundreds of thousands of people that were saying, no, America should not go to war with Iraq. And as we all know, Congress and the administration decided to go to war anyway, and that we invaded and then spent the next 2 decades seeing Americans killed and our tax dollars going over there. And for me, the reason that I got involved in politics was I felt passionately about an issue. I said, this issue matters, and I don't think we should go to war in Iraq. And my takeaway from that, some of my friends were sort of demoralized and like, oh, well, we won didn't happen. And for me, what clicked was, damn, marching in the street matters and it's important, but what matters a lot more is who's in the room that gets to make that decision. And I said, marching in the street is a critical part of the ecosystem, but I want to go to where the power is because those people just ignored us. And I want to put people in office that are going to listen and be more aligned with me. And so after that, I said, hard electoral politics is for me. I got a job early on in 2004 as a volunteer coordinator with Inez Tenenbaum's race. And then the following year got a job through Mayor Riley on some city council races and was off to the races doing political work. And for me, it was all about passion about an issue and realizing that you can be the most passionate person in the world, but if the decision maker isn't listening, then we got to replace the decision maker. And I think a lot of people are probably feeling that today about a number of other new issues.
Replace many of the decision makers, please. Let's get into it. Um, that's incredible. I can't imagine doing that at that age. Even though I'm a lot more politically active now, I wonder, coming off of that, right? We've gone through a few decades, and we're at the point where we are now, both nationally and at the state level.
Sure.
And I told some friends earlier this week, I feel like we're in one of those kind of real shifty moments right now where it almost feels like COVID, George Floyd, Black Lives Matter kind of moment to me, where, you've got a woman getting shot in Minneapolis by ICE yesterday, Maduro getting arrested, or however you name that, by the Trump invasion to Venezuela. There's a lot going on sociopolitically, health wise. It feels like to me we're at a pressure cooker kind of moment and the lid's just about to pop off. I don't know if that is accurate to you, but I just wonder how you are personally kind of making sense of this moment that we're in.
Yeah, I will say, probably not. I'm not making as much sense of it as I'd like, if I'm being honest. I think, for me, and in my political journey up until 2019, there was this sort of, it was ebb and flows. Like Democrats would have good years, Democrats would have worse years, but I could sort of follow the story arc. And to your point, COVID was like a jolt to the political system, along with George Floyd and other things. Like that moment really shifted things. And I will say, maybe this isn't the best analogy, but I think of it as an earthquake. And like that might have been the first shake, but we are living either through aftershocks or another one right now. And before we might have had weather and better days and worse days, but like these are seismic shifts that we are living through. And it is hard to process both like what to do as a person, and also how to operate in a world where you're supposed to still go to work and make dinner for the family and yet you're hearing news that like you just genuinely need time to process. Like we invaded a country to extradite a person. That is mind-boggling. Our tax dollars were spent yesterday for a extrajudicial police force to shoot a woman, an American woman. Like these are not easy things to grapple with, and that's the last week, Taylor, right? Like this
Yeah.
is not over 10 years. And so I just think I think you're right that we are in very unprecedented times. And to me, one of the things that I've always focused on is like, what can I do? And there are things that I wish I could change, but that are too big for me to take on alone. And so to me, and this works for me, I'm not saying it's for everyone, but like focusing on what I can do, focusing on where I feel like I can move the needle a little or create some change has been grounding and reassuring. And to me, the faith part that comes with saying, if a couple million of us do what we can on our own level, that will push up some change on a bigger level. It's not as, when I was 20, I was like, I'm going to change the world. I can do it myself. And,
Yeah.
I'll turn 40 next year, and I've come to realize it's not about what I'm doing, but contributing to a broader team of people, whether we're organized or not, pushing for something.
Yeah, yeah. It strikes me, there's so much about this moment and moments like it that really require us to kind of take stock of like what do we have within us that's going to keep us and hold us in a steady place enough to be able to respond to these moments and not just kind of like freeze or bury our head in the sand or say to hell with all this shit. Like there's no fixing it, and I'm just gonna go live out the rest of my days on the beach somewhere, right? Like I
Yeah.
think a lot of people right now, um, both within I think the kind of political community apparatus and outside of it, are grappling with these really hard realities and holding tensions and really trying to figure out like how do I show up to this in a way that actually makes a difference, right? And I do think it's really important to stay grounded enough to say, like, what can I do right now that's going to make a difference, and where can I help, and where can I kind of move the needle? And I don't. There are times in which I feel that we're not equipping people with the skills and the tools to be able to do that kind of that takes like inner work, right? That takes like some
Yeah.
time to like slow down and pause and reflect on like what do I value and what's important to me. And it's just unfortunate. Those are skills that we've just kind of tossed out the window in
We
our
really have.
kind of collective ethos, right? And I
It-
just don't know where we go from here.
well, and I think two things on that. One, I think, it's often about meeting people at the moment and place where they are. And right now, like, to someone that feels like they need to pull out their hair you know, because there are Americans being shot by police, because, you know, gay marriage might be disbanded next year, saying like, hey, will you come phone bank, feels like really falling short of where they're at. And
Right.
part being, that's really hard to meet. Like when you're an 11 out of 10, there's not a lot to do. Like you sort of almost have to come back down to a 6 or 5 to do something functional to move forward. And I mean, I firmly believe that part of the plan is to keep us at an 11 so that we cannot function, we cannot organize, we cannot create change. But the other part, Taylor, that I think, like, I'm going to sound like an old grandpa here, but the other part when you talk about like taking some time and processing is we have moved into a world in the last decade that is hyper fixated on speed, right?
Hmm.
TikTok videos are getting shorter. I can't
Hmm.
believe Amazon, remember when 2-day delivery was wild, and now it's
I
like,
know.
have it in an hour? What are we doing here?
Yeah.
So one of the things that I think we've got to do is the discipline to say, the consumer economy is pushing us to go quick. What we might need to do is pull the reins in and slow down a little bit, because you're right, that kind of inner work doesn't happen in 3 minutes, and it doesn't happen once and you're done. It takes repetitive work and longer time, and that's just not that's not a Democrat Republican issue. That is just a, like, society is not setting us up to take that time in those moments.
Yeah, and you can't build bridges when you're at an 11, right?
Yep.
You can't
Yeah.
like make sound decisions at an 11. And even for the folks who are kind of in the thick of this political space, right, who are doing all they can to make a difference, there's so much capacity for burnout too, right? Because you're always kind of operating up here, responding. And, so much of what I think about Democratic politics, particularly in South Carolina, Greenville County up here where I am, it's also reactive to what the Republicans are doing.
Yeah.
And I would love if the kind of Democratic leadership across our state would take a step back and just say, if we were actually in the majority, right? Like, what is the vision for what this state could be? What would that look like? Like, could we just take a second and actually put forth an alternative vision for what we believe is possible? And, there's something about even that proactiveness that I think brings people down from an 11, gets them to like a 5 and says, okay, how do we go and walk towards that horizon, right?
Yeah.
And there's just so much work to do. I'm amped, as you can tell, but I'm like,
Well,
my goodness.
and I think you're spot on. And I think one of the problems is that we are living in a world, and again, not just in the political sphere, but across it, that says that if you don't react and react immediately, you've missed an opportunity. And I think one of the
Mm,
challenges is, like, actually, maybe you haven't. Maybe,
right.
like, that is the hard part. And, like, I'm guilty of this. I see a text pop up and I'm like, I got to respond now. Like, my wife gives me a hard time of it because I'm like, what if I don't respond within a minute? And she's like, the world will go on. You can
Yeah, it's okay.
20 minutes. And I think that's the hard part, is we have programmed ourselves and been programmed to believe that instantaneous response must occur. And to your point, it takes a lot of discipline. And let's be super clear, if you're the leader of a party and you say, let's slow down, let's be proactive, be prepared. Former party chair here, you are going to catch a lot of flack from activists that say,
Nobody wants to. Yeah,
why didn't you respond to issue 4 on the city council agenda? Why didn't you, Timon said this crazy thing, and you've just got to have the thick skin that says, yep, we're gonna not react to a couple of things. And I don't think it's not respond. We're gonna not react to a few things because we need to change how we're moving. And I will just say that is easier said than done.
totally. Right. And I want to preface the rest of our conversation because we're about to get into some Democratic politics across the state, right? Like, I truly believe that people are working so hard
Yep.
to make things different in South Carolina, from the state party to the House members and the Senate members and folks on the local level, party chairs. I give so much props to people who are stepping up, mostly in volunteer circumstances, to do what
Yep.
they can do to shift the tide. And it just strikes me that Democrats over the past 2.5 decades have really found themselves in the wilderness a little bit in South
For sure.
Carolina.
For sure.
So I'd love for you to just give us maybe a lay of the land of like, how did we get here?
Yeah.
I think what 1990 or so, the Democrats were actually in the majority in South
Yep.
Carolina. 30 years later, it's like we are nowhere in the ballpark of competing in that way. And so, just give us a sense of how we got here and
Yeah.
what are things looking like right now.
Yeah, so I think two things. One of the things that I learned early on in politics is that there is nothing more powerful than momentum, and momentum can be really great when it's working in your favor. And if your opponent's got the momentum, it is just like being pummeled
Mm,
time and time again. And so I think, let's remember that by the 90s, yes, the majority of the legislature was still Democratic, but that was still Democratic momentum from the 70s and 80s, right? Like,
mhm,
by that point, the state probably was not actually Democratic broadly. That was sort of hangover
mm,
from before. And so what happened is we start to see this shift towards Republicans. And then like we can't ignore, and I know people get tired of saying it, but like the the shift from politics has always been about trying to win, and people will always do something to try and give their party, their team, their candidate a leg up. But the change in the late 90s going into the 2000 redistricting that Republicans took is wild. Like it can't be underestimated how much that shifted things. There are, if we drew fair districts, we would have, I don't know, at least 40% of the seats in the state house, not whatever, 25%. Like it
Yeah.
it is a combo of Republicans started getting momentum, and once they had that, again, it's a powerful drug, and with that, they use that power to exacerbate uh, their wins. And so, I think what you've got now is there's that happening on sort of the party level, but you also have in South Carolina, and like this in Greenville, I know this down in Charleston. The South Carolina used to be more evenly split between urban and rural. And we are
Mhm.
never going to be like a Georgia where they've got an Atlanta and sort of everywhere else. But we are moving as a state to a place where basically rural counties are emptying out at a rate that's like pretty mind boggling. And so all of a sudden you've got high growth areas, Horry County, Charleston, Greenville, and everywhere else is not just stagnating but like losing population. And I don't think we should underestimate the role that that's played as well, in terms of like how these seats are won, how they're held, and just what that says about the state. Like the state is very different in 2026 now than it was even in 2000 in terms of who lives here, where they live, and what their outlooks are. So that to me is important setting is it's not just about partisanship, but also the state shifting to a more urbanized electorate. And I use the term urbanized not loosely, but like again, it's not Charlotte, it's not Atlanta, and nowhere ever will be. Like Greenville never will be that, Charleston will never be that, but they have become more urbanized than they were 20, 30 years ago.
Totally. Yeah. So when you became party chair, what year was that?
That was
2000.
2015, I want to say.
Okay. And Charleston was a pretty red area, Charleston County, right? Like,
I think when I first started working down here in 2004, Charleston County did not have a single countywide elected Democrat. When I took over as chair, we had one. And like this year, we will flip the final Republican held countywide seat. And
wow.
so again, I think about the momentum piece statewide, right? If we look back over the last 20 years, it's been ugly for Democrats, but momentum can work for us in certain pockets, certain areas when the work is done and the demographics are shifting in the right area. But yeah, when I started working, Charleston was not a Democratic county. Obama in '08 was, I believe, the very first year that Charleston County voted for a Democrat for president since, uh,
Wow.
pre the switch. And so to me, one of the things that I take solace in is that like things can change for the better. It is slower than I'd like, but they can and they do change. And that's something we really need to hold to in this moment.
How did things change there? Because I hear this and I'm like, well, maybe there's hope for Greenville County. Like maybe here in the upstate we can make some moves. I know the demographic is maybe a little bit different, right? And there's a lot of kind of, I don't know, hanging on to some things up here that maybe are not as relevant down in Charleston, but that's a huge swing over the course of a decade or so, right? And so I'm just like, how did how did you all do it? What are the tactical things that you felt like were important, that made flipping all of those seats possible?
So I think there's two things. One is like resources matter. And and I think here's the key part. We sometimes say that having a lot of resources is important, but how you spend them is equally important. When I started, people were still doing the like, oh, let's go, give this church some money, let's do a fish fry over here. And thankfully that's changed dramatically. And it's like, no, direct voter contact matters, and I don't
Mm,
care whether you're Hispanic, black, white, direct mail is important. Knocking on doors is important. Like those are critical things. And if we pretend like they're not, we're going to lose. So having some resources, spending them smartly. But the other part was when I took over as chair, again, this momentum piece is really core to what I believe creates movement level change, and is that wins beget more wins and losses bring more losses. And so the first thing was like, okay, what can we find that we can win? And
mm,
I don't care if it's dog catcher for District 2, right? One of the problems as Democrats is we just get focused on the big shiny objects. We're like, who's running for Congress? Who's running for president? And that's exciting and cool. And I get it. And it's awesome. But one of the things that I knew as chair when we started was like, look, we ain't going to win the congressional seat in 2015 or 2016. Like, we're not going to win. We had just come off the governor's race. Like, things were not looking great. And so it was like, where are those small local wins where we can do things? And so, like, I think about, for y'all up in Greenville, like, even though Tina won a seat that was held before, that was a big win and should be trumpeted. And don't underestimate how much better candidate recruitment will be because Tina just won. And
right.
similarly down here, we took a chance on a seat, and we got Mary Tinkler to run for a state house seat against a guy that, like, we were probably not going to win the district, but we had heard that he might be indicted.
Hmm.
And lo and behold, Republicans are a little corrupt. He was indicted. And so she won that seat, and it made people realize, oh, there's opportunities here. Then we had another Democratic state house member. And then when she was up for reelection again, she decided to run for treasurer, won that as a countywide. So to me, it's like, what did we do tactically? Take small wins, turn them into medium wins, turn them into big wins. And I think sometimes we just get stuck on what's the big win. And I just don't I think that's the wrong way to build. You don't start with the top of the tower.
Mm, Yeah, I mean, people hate hearing that, right?
They
Like
do.
people do not want to hear that you don't believe that we can win this the congressional seat, right, or this
Oh,
U.S. Senate seat. Like nobody wants to hear the kind of what feels like cynicism, but really is rooted in like here are the numbers. Like this is the data that we have that tells me that this likely isn't going to happen. Doesn't mean we shouldn't be running for that seat, right? But like, but you just need to know that my discipline is telling me that we got to start right here. And I feel like sometimes we just lack discipline.
we
I don't know
yeah.
how else to say it. And what might you gift us by way of your wisdom? Like, how do we stay more disciplined as a party and as a democratic movement in the state?
Yeah, so I think two things. One is part of it to me becomes a resources issue, right? So like the first year I was chair, I can't remember exactly. Maybe we raised like $75,000. And all I can think is $75,000 in a congressional seat means nothing. Like that is not like that moves no needles. $75,000 spent on 2 county council seats, that gets
Hmm.
interesting. We can do something there. And so for me, I had to frame it because, like, and don't get me wrong, the Saturday morning breakfast crowd was not thrilled when I was like, the congressional race is not a priority. They were like, how could you possibly say this? Like, are you even a Democrat? You're a terrible person. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. And I was like, great, cool, thank you. But like that discipline is key. And I think there's two parts to the discipline that can help us. One is we we just need to be honest about what's doable, and honest about that, like, South like, South Carolina is not going to vote for the Democratic nominee in 2028 for president. I know that, and that's okay, because I think, to me, it's not defeatist to say, I believe in that year we should flip 4 state house seats. That would be big. That would be a win. And one of the things that I see Republicans do much better in this state than we do. They're getting worse at it, but 10, 20 years ago, they were great at every little win they would celebrate. And to me, one of the things we don't necessarily do well as Democrats is celebrate our wins. Like the night of an election, we'll be like, oh, this was cool, great job. But it's like, like I want Tina out on the circuit talking to people in Spartanburg and Union about you should run for local office and here's why. I want Aaron Polkay down here in Charleston who want to see to talk about like why younger leadership matters and why you should be willing to step out and challenge someone if they've said this is my last term for 4 cycles in a row. Maybe it's time to just say, okay, you've said it was your last, I'm ready to run. I just think we need to do a better job of putting those people out and talking to others to inspire others.
Yeah, yeah. This gets at maybe just a slight shift. Like, who's responsible for all this stuff, right? And we talked about resources. I want to ask a question about money because that seems to be a huge challenge for candidates, for the party. Like, where's the money supposed to come from? Why don't we have more of it to do what we need to do here in the state? And after we get done with the fundraising, I really want to talk about like what's the role of the actual like South Carolina Democratic Party, county chairs, and what has to happen kind of outside of that realm. And so let's do money first because you talked about resources. Do we have a money problem in South Carolina, and how do we fix it?
Yeah. So we got 2 money problems, right? There's a reality that we will for the next 5 years at a minimum will always be outraised by Republicans. Cool, got it. Good news is David and Goliath can still happen, and like we have seen that we can win seats even being outraised. Having said that, so we have the first problem of we've just got to narrow that gap and raise more. The second problem is there is a very challenging and concerning outflow of dollars from South Carolina. And what I'm talking about is donors who get text messages and they're given $5, $10 because they got a text from Roy Cooper in North Carolina, and they'll give there, but they won't give to their county council candidate. But then also, like, you look at major donors, there are people that give to presidential races, and so there's both the like $5, $10 donors, but also I'm talking about, you look at some of these roles, there are donors cutting $5,000, $10,000 checks to PACs that do nothing in South Carolina. And I understand why, but to me, one of the things that I think about again on a resource front is like, if our family is going to give $1,000 to political candidates this year, I can give that to the most expensive race next year, like, the North Carolina Senate race. That'll probably be a, I don't know, $200 million race. My $1,000 means nothing. My $1,000 given to whoever runs in 116, House District 116 to beat Teeple, like they might raise $100,000, and that could be 1% of their whole budget. So we've got to get donors to believe that their dollars matter here and have to stay here. And we've got to get better about, again, the chasing the shiny object. Like, when Amy McGrath ran for Senate in Kentucky, and like the number of people that would come to me and be like, I sent her $100, isn't that great? And I wanted to be like, yes, generosity is always good, but no, like that is not like, I'd rather you give $50 locally than send $100 out of state. And that is something that we just haven't done a great job of.
Yeah, it strikes me. I feel angst at what you're saying because the number of people who will say, I'm writing these postcards to people in Pennsylvania and North Carolina, and I'm going down to Georgia to knock doors, and I'm giving my money to 5 different candidates all over the country. It grinds my gears so much because it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Like it's like we're not gonna move the needle here if all of the resources are flowing out of the state. And I just, a lot of what I feel like we end up having to do as someone who's a former candidate or party chair is the convincing people that it's worth it, or convincing people that we got a shot. Right. Yes. And so much of our time and energy goes into like needing to convince people to believe that we're not even talking as much about the actual shit we want to do, right?
Yeah.
Like the vision that we have for our communities and for the state. And it just like, I'm like, we spend so much of our time and energy focused on trying to get people to just believe enough that their dollars and their energy and time are worth staying here, that we're not even focused as we should be on communicating what the vision is and how we're going to make people's lives better. And I see that now, right, in some of the statewide campaigns that are happening in South Carolina. Like, you know,
Yeah.
Amy Andrews, love her, think she's going to be a great candidate. I see her spending a lot of time having to convince people that it's worth giving her a shot, right? And so it irks me that people here, both, I hear this in Greenville County all the time, but across the state, I'm like, keep your dollars here, right?
Yeah.
Invest at home, at least first. If you want to send some stuff outside after, go for it. But make this your home.
If you got 10 grand to give and you give 5 locally and then want to send a few thousand elsewhere, cool. But that first part is more. The one part though, Taylor, that I do want to say just as like a critique of not the party, but more campaigns is like, we also have to be honest with donors, right? And say, to your point, like, I want you to give me some money and give me a shot. And I want to be clear. I'm not going to show you a poll that shows it's a 49-51 race when it's not. And
Right.
I think about that. And so Spencer Wetmore's seat, we knew that was trending our way. And we knew that early on that we were at like 46%. Someone had run it ish, decent campaign. And I was like, we're going to raise a lot of money. We're going to spend it on here. And if it's a great year, maybe we win. But I believe we can get 48, 49%. And we did. We did not win, but we got 48, 49. And that's when then all of a sudden the donors were like, oh, you were honest. You didn't tell me it's a done deal. We got close. And then we got Spencer Wetmore to run. She was like, oh, 48, 49. Like, I'm a great candidate. Much, no offense, but much better than the ones that had run before. She got in, more money came in because we were honest, and then we flipped that seat. And so I think the other part is that on the investing locally is like, I think we've got to be honest to say, hey, I'm not going to win this seat this year, but this is a 2 or 3 cycle play. And I think that is, maybe I've got too much faith, but like, I think donors get that. If you're just like, hey, I need $1,000 this year and $1,000 in 2 years because probably going to come up short this year, but this is how we build. I just think people get that.
Yeah. Well, and it requires county parties, the state party having vision and a plan, right? Like, I want to see written down things that say, we think that we can get here in 60 years. Like, I want a roadmap. Somebody show me the roadmap on a piece of paper or in a presentation that, as an investor in campaigns and in the kind of political state of our party, right? Like, I can track with you now, as opposed to year in and year out, just kind of throwing stuff at the wall.
That's right.
And not knowing where you're going in 2 years or down the line. I don't know. That whole element of things just really gets under my skin. So, what should campaigns be doing better? Hold on, actually, because I feel like we're getting into this mode, and I don't want to get super critiqued on this where we're just bashing Democrats.
No.
What do Democratic campaigns do well across the state? What have you seen that you've been proud of in the past few years? And what do we need to be doing better from a campaign perspective to make ourselves more competitive in areas across the state?
So something that I've seen Democrats excel at over the last decade, caveat, I think we lost our way a little bit during COVID, and understandably why, is field and knocking doors. Like, that is something that I see regularly down here in the Low Country, where Democrats go and get on doors and might move 0.5%. And like, that doesn't sound like a lot, but hell, we just lost a state Senate race by 20, or state House race by 21 votes. Like, 0.5% would have been a landslide win. So knocking on doors is critical. And especially because I think that, this sounds weird, but Republicans have so much money, they get lazy. right? They're like, I'm just going to send 6 pieces of mail and I don't need to knock on doors because I raised 3 times the money. Knocking on doors coupled with mail and doing real programs is very powerful. And I think, especially in a time when we're all on our devices all the time, the efficiency and effectiveness of TV, digital, mail is declining. I want to be clear, still important. But like door knocking is critical. Like I think again about some of these city council seats, like Ben D'Alessandro, who won a seat down here, Aaron Polke, those guys knocked a boatload of doors, and it made a difference both in who might have defaulted to the incumbent just because they're like, why rock the boat? You know, Charleston's big into, why would we change things? So like gave them that permission, but also showed that they, to use my word of the day, had momentum, that they were like, I'm out, I'm active, I'm doing things. And then when their mail showed up in the mailboxes, they were like, I met Ben. He was nice. He knocked on my door. And so I think Democrats do that well, but we've got to kind of expand it and be willing to knock on more moderate doors. A lot of times I see field programs that are like Dem based voters only. I think we've got to get comfortable knocking on doors of people that aren't going to agree with us right from the jump. But I think those conversations can be really powerful, and Democrats do that well.
What do we need to get better at from a campaign's perspective?
From a campaign's perspective, I would put it into 2 buckets. Incumbents need to remember that the world has changed in the decade or 2 or 3 since they got elected. They've got to realize that when they ran for office in 1998 and got elected a certain way, the district's changed, the world has changed, and they've got to do digital, they've got to do direct mail, and they have to make an effort. On challengers or open seats or non-incumbents, I think it's really, like, to me, the thing where I see the sort of weakest ability is message discipline. Too often I see Democrats that are excited about 12 issues and they want to tell you about them all. And I'm like, great. When you're talking to Julie, the mom, and she's got 2 kids and politics is not her obsession, you get one shot. You get one issue, and you got to tell Julie that 6 times by mail, twice on her door, send her a few text messages, all about that one issue. So I guess to me, what I see Democrats sometimes struggling with is like, they want to talk to you about everything. They want to show you that they're passionate and smart, and they care about roads, and they care about trees, and they care about schools, and they care about wages, and they care about everything, and all of a sudden your eyes have glazed over. I think where I've seen people be effective, like, you look at Joe Cunningham's race when he flipped that congressional seat. I think that every other word out of his mouth was, I'm against offshore drilling. You could be like, hey, today's Thursday. He'd be like, great, I'm against offshore drilling. And people like inside the, political chattering group, people would like make fun of it. They'd be like, he can't talk about anything else. He won't talk about this or that. Great, good. And it worked. Like, we have to get comfortable that you can legislate on a bunch of issues, but when you're campaigning, find one, stick with it, and run with it.
Yeah. Particularly in this media environment, right, where we talked about this, so much is coming at us all the time. Like creating like memory and repetition is probably the core way, so that when you show up and knock on that door, they're like, oh, Joe Cunningham, offshore drilling, no, got it, right? Like that kind of thing. Yeah, I agree with you. When I ran for office, I had my list of like 6 or 7 things, right? And if I can go back, right, or maybe the next time I run, it's going to be 1 or 2, and that's all that we're talking about. And if you want to have a conversation like outside of that,
of course,
have a phone call, right? Yeah. So let's get into some roles and responsibilities, because we've talked about a lot, we've covered a lot, and it just strikes me that there is really so much to do to change the tide here. And I just don't know how the state party as an apparatus, or these county part, like, they can't do it all. I don't think that they have the resources, the capacity, even sometimes the expertise to kind of pull the levers on all these things. So what do you feel like should be the core responsibilities of the state party and county parties? And what do you feel like needs to be happening in infrastructure that needs to be built outside of those entities to help move the needle?
So, if I could get on my soapbox, there is one key decision that will determine whether a local party is going to switch seats or not, right? County parties got to decide, are they a social club or are they an agent for flipping seats? And for many years in Charleston, before there was sort of a shift, it was a social club. We meet Saturday morning for breakfast. We have a coffee group. When we get together for our county party meetings, we're telling each other we all agree with each other. And that was it. We talked amongst ourselves and hung out, and it felt good, right? I love being able to say, Taylor, I think this, you think that. Cool, let's hug it out. That's great. The shift from a county party that says our job is to hold social events for people to feel good to our job is to use the structure, which is raise dollars and volunteers to go into strategic areas, not everywhere, strategic areas and flip seats. That alone, if we had another dozen county parties make that shift, we would transform this state. So I think that is a decision that activists should be asking their county party chair, and then every decision is within that line, right? Is this event raising dollars or volunteers? And if not, probably not a county party function. There's a lot of cool things that can happen. You want to meet together with some buddies and have a beer and talk politics? Great, fine. That's not a county party function. Uh, and so I just think that's a decision that's got to be made that matters a lot. And then from the state party, I um I I struggle because they are so under resourced. I'm not sure what else they can be doing. And I mean that truthfully. I think that the state party, when they're functioning at their best, it's about driving messaging on specific things. So helping candidates, like down here in Charleston, we've got a probate judge who like spent a bunch of tax dollar money on shit he shouldn't have. Great. The state party should be highlighting that over and over so that we can flip that seat and win. And so I think for them, it's about messaging. And for county parties, it's about raising dollars and people to focus on lower level seats.
Yeah, yeah. So I hear you and probably totally agree. And that presents this cornucopia of other things that it feels like we have to have other groups, organizations, individuals doing, right? Like the media ecosystem, I know up here in the upstate is piss poor. People don't know what's happening ever.
Yeah.
And the local journalism has been gutted, right? And so that has to be built back up by some group, right? I think voter mobilization and education efforts, right, and advocacy and reaching out to groups, and there's just so much to do. I know that you, Heather Bauer, Chris Kinney, Kimbrell, Garvin started the Comeback, which was a series of kind of conversations and tours across the state to talk about how Democrats can rebuild electoral muscle and power across the state. And that feels like an example to me of people decided that they were going to step up outside of the kind of normal apparatus to say, there are things that we can do that would help move us forward. So I wonder, maybe we can talk a little bit about the Comeback, and what the kind of impetus was for getting that rolling and where you're at now.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think to me, one of the things that's been really important about this effort and this sort of volunteer led thing is, I think that sometimes we, let's recognize it in Republicans first. They fell hard for Donald Trump will save us and do everything. And I think sometimes as Democrats, we say the state party should do this. They should do everything. Why aren't they doing A, B, C, D, E, F, and G? And it's I don't know. I think if the state party's doing A, B, and C, they're doing pretty damn well.
Yeah.
D, E, and F might be on you, or might be on a group, or might be on, Planned Parenthood, or on Ren, or on a county party, or on a candidate. Like, I think one of the things we need to be careful of is not saying a state party can and should do everything. They have a role, and a critical role. But I think that for me, one of the things that I was excited when Heather and Cambrell sort of wanted to get going with this was this idea of saying two things. One, like, getting Cambrell and Heather are incredible, both elected officials and speakers, and all too often state reps stay in their county. And part of it was like, I want Rep Bauer and Rep Garvin speaking in Spartanburg, speaking in Horry, speaking in Orangeburg, because there are people showing up at those meetings who don't feel inspired. And if they've been coming for a while, they're seeing the same 30 people they've been seeing. And bringing someone new in that says, I see you, let me tell you what I did, and you can do it too, that is worth a wild amount. And so to me, I was excited to join them and share, my role. I've never run for office, not a candidate, but my role was to talk about county parties and be like, here's what you can do. Like, your county party should not be raising money to spend it on a Saturday morning breakfast. You should be raising it to spend on direct mail in one race. Pick one race, right? Don't spend it on every Democrat running in the county. And yes, you're going to, ruffle some feathers, but like, pick the seat you want to flip and focus on it. We should be not just meeting on a Wednesday night in an auditorium to talk amongst ourselves. We should be going out Saturday and Sunday afternoon and canvassing and supporting those candidates. So to me, what was exciting was saying, like, I fundamentally believe the state party can't and shouldn't do everything. And what sometimes that means outside groups, again, whether it's C4s, just volunteers, county parties, but saying to everyone else, like, we've got to up our game as well. And if we up our game, the state party will do better. We'll do better electorally. And so to me, that was sort of the reason for wanting to do that, is just to say, like, I can sit here in Charleston and talk to the Charleston folks, but I think it's better if we go out and say, here's how we got some wins, and I think you can do it too, and building that community.
Yeah. So where do you go from here? 2026 is a big year. It feels like we have a lot of opportunity to flip some seats, to win some seats back that probably we never should have lost in the state house.
That's right.
So how are you looking at 2026? Where are the opportunities? What's possible, and what should everybody be doing right now to prepare?
Sure. So the first thing is, you, the listener, should run for office. Let me tell you why it's going to be awesome. And I'll say, like, we need more people to run for office. One of the things that, much like the momentum of wins get more wins, is when people show up on their ballot and they see there's Democrats on 4 out of 20 slots on their ballot, they go, God, party's got nothing going on. Like, we need people for them to vote for. And one of the things that I learned from the Obama campaign early on was, so they sent me in the general election to a rural southern part of Ohio. And they were like, Brady, here's your job. Are you ready? You're going to lose by less. And I was like, what? And they were like, we think right now we're at, I can't remember the numbers, but 40% of the vote. We want you to get to 42. And I was like, don't we want to win? And they were like, nah, you're not going to. That's like, your goal is not to get 50%. Your goal is to lose by less. And I was like, okay. And again, that took a little moment to be like, dang, I want to win, but we need people to run for state house who are going to go into a district that on a generic ballot, the Dem gets 42 and get 45% of the vote. And in this year in which, because we have the insanity from this administration, that 42 to 45 might go to 47, 48. Like, there will be some surprise wins this year because of how insane the backlash to this fascist government is. But so the first thing is getting ready. People should run for office. Second part is, if you're not going to run for office, one of the things that I've been saying for the last year is, like, this administration scares me. Like, They scare me. And when you're scared, you can do one of two things. You can hide, or you can do something that's scary to you to fight back. So, like, one of the things I've been telling people is if you're like, hey, before I wrote some postcards, awesome, and thank you. If that's because knocking on doors scared you, go knock some damn doors. If this administration scares you, you've got to do something that scares you. If you've knocked on doors but said, I'm never going to run for office, do something that scares you and run for office. If you said, I don't know if giving locally matters, take that leap of faith. Do something that scares you and give. So to me, it's a call that says, whatever you would normally do, take it up a notch, because that is what's needed in this year. It's what's needed in this moment, and it's what will build this ecosystem.
Yeah. And if we do that, right, like if we have a lot more people running and a lot more seats, not only state house, but down ballot in our county council seats, our school board elections, our county commissions, it does feel really likely that Democrats can break the House supermajority in 2026.
Yeah. And like, let's just talk about why that's important, because I think sometimes we hear break the majority and it's like,
I'm like, just give me the headline. I don't care. Like, yes, tell us why it's important.
Yeah. So right now, there is a reality that in the state house, if every Republican votes for it, it does not matter what we do. We cannot filibuster it. We cannot stop it. We are in such a minority that we've lost even like the minority rights that exist, right? Like, think about in Congress, like, oh, the minority can still do things to gum up the process or slow it down. We've kind of lost that ability in the state house. So what it gives us the chance to do is like get back on the field, right? Right now we've been benched. And so we need those 4 seats so that when they bring, I can't remember if it's 2 or 3 insane abortion bills, we can drag that out. We can make them talk about why they hate women. We can do all of these things that right now we don't really have that opportunity to do. So breaking the supermajority is critical so that we can at least get back to, it's not even a level playing field, but just being on the field. Because reality is we're just not right now in the state house. And so I think that's a critical thing that again, we were talking about the honesty part. Can we win a majority of seats and be in the majority this year? No, I don't believe we can. Can we break the supermajority and start to highlight their absurdity, recruit better candidates, build momentum? Damn sure we can, and we should be doing that this year.
Yeah, and when we're able to actually hold their feet to the fire, it creates opportunities for candidates to hold them accountable, right? Like, as a candidate, I can say, so-and-so said this at the state house, and I can bring that back to constituents and say, that's why you should elect me instead of him the next time. And so I just want to paint the picture for people. Like, it's a circular thing happening here. And the longer that we're in the super minority, the more power we continue to give away, right? And so it really does go back to the word of the day, momentum, right? Like, we've got to start somewhere. 2026 feels like the ripest moment that we've had in quite some time to really give this a gut punch, right? And say enough is enough. And we're going to turn the tide in South Carolina and start to build and make people's lives better, quite frankly, right? Like, there's so much to do here. Like, the failure of Republican leadership is just astounding to me, quite frankly. And we've got to win seats if we're going to shift the playing field and create some legislation, or at least push back against legislation that we know is harmful.
That's right. And not only does it allow the opportunity, so like, I think about this, I'm sure people have heard this story, but so like Spencer Wetmore put up a bill. So like, right, we worked hard. It took this, we got to think timeline. Took 3 cycles to flip House District 115 and put Spencer Wetmore. In her first session, she brought up a bill about codifying Roe versus Wade. There was a Republican that voted against it. Heather Bauer talked about that and nothing else and flipped a seat and beat that Republican, right? So like, over the course of a decade, we flipped 2 seats. And to your point, it was momentum based. It was losing by less, then getting Spencer in, Then Spencer filed legislation that held a Republican accountable. Like, this will not happen overnight, but it starts in 26. And I think this is such a critical year for people to be on the ballot, give more than they've ever given, knock more than they've ever knocked. And I think people will be happily surprised at what we can do when we're given that ability to hold people accountable, hold Republicans accountable for the truly insane and harmful things that they're doing.
Yeah, this is the year. So if you're listening, just do what Brady said, right? Like take the next best step
Right.
that you haven't taken before, and have the courage, right? Have the political courage that you're looking at everybody else and saying, what are they doing? How about you turn that on yourself and say, what am I doing? And what more can I do that I haven't done before? I love that. You know, if you're scared of this, like that's the next best thing that you should do. I love that. Okay, we're getting close to time. Last question. What keeps you inspired? Why do you keep showing up to do this? It's kind of backbreaking work, to be honest.
Yeah.
And so, what's your why?
What's my why? You know, there's the like flippant answer that is like, I just like to win and want to go beat up on Republicans. But like, no, I think for me, I fundamentally believe that policy impacts those who often have the smallest voice. And to me, what I've learned over time and knew even from like a younger age is that if good people don't stand up, the status quo will continue to punch down on those that can least take a punch. It will, you know, politics will force bad policy that keeps poor people poorer. It will keep minorities from rising to the level of success that they should have. It will create atmospheres where large companies succeed and mom and pop shops don't. It will create bad education. And to me, there's a bit of a moral obligation to say that is not the world that I am willing to live in, and that is not the world that I'm willing to leave for my daughter. And so honestly, it's a bit of like what inspires me is obligation, that like I've seen good policy change lives. I've seen very specific policy take people from a life of depression and destitution to success and fulfillment. And I don't see why we can't have that for every person in South Carolina. And to me, I'm just going to keep pushing until we get closer and closer to that, because good policy changes lives, and Lord knows we need that.
Awesome. Thank you, Brady.
Yeah.
I want you to know that amidst the really crazy and chaotic currents of political power in South Carolina, you are one of the great ships who keep steering us towards a better horizon. And I'm really appreciative of all the work that you've done throughout the past several years, and excited to keep working with you, man, and keep having these conversations. I hope we get to continue to educate people on what's up and where they can pitch in and make a difference.
Absolutely. And thank you for doing this. I think part of building that ecosystem is having folks like you out there talking, engaging different audiences, because like this doesn't get better if you and I just chat on the phone. It gets better when we bring in a wider audience and start to build some community here.
Awesome. Thank you.